What would you do if the person you were trying to forget suddenly made you feel seen again? I never imagined I'd be confessing this, but the night my flatmate got hard beside me, something inside me changed forever. It wasn't about lust. It wasn't even about betrayal. It was about loneliness, the kind that creeps in when love fades and silence becomes your closest companion. That night, I crossed a line I didn't even know existed. This isn't just another story about infidelity, it's about the battle between guilt and desire, between loyalty and the ache to feel alive again. So, if you've ever loved, lost, or lived in the gray area between right and wrong, stay till the end. Because what I'm about to share might make you question everything you thought you knew about faithfulness, love, and temptation. Broken Heart, subscribe now for more real emotional confessions and forbidden stories, each one based on true events, told straight from the heart. I never thought a moment so small could change how I saw myself. It started with something as ordinary as sharing an apartment, two adults splitting rent, trying to save in a world where living alone was becoming impossible. He was my flatmate, nothing more. At least, that's what I told myself at first. The first few weeks were nothing unusual. We cooked together sometimes, laughed about bills, and respected each other's privacy. But there were nights when I'd hear his quiet breathing from the other side of the thin wall. It shouldn't have mattered, but somehow it made me feel less alone. My marriage had been cold for years, and silence had become the loudest thing in my home. When I moved out to that apartment, I told my husband it was temporary, that I needed space to focus on work. The truth was, I needed space to remember who I was before I became invisible. My flatmate reminded me of that woman, the one who used to laugh easily, the one who could still feel wanted. That night, it was raining. The power went out, leaving the whole apartment dimly lit by streetlights leaking through the blinds. We'd both fallen asleep watching something on my laptop, something funny, harmless. But I woke up later and realized he hadn't moved. He was right there beside me on the couch, breathing slow and steady, close enough that I could feel his warmth. Then I noticed it, that unmistakable tension in the air. My heart began to race, not because of what I saw, but because of what I felt. For a moment, I forgot the labels, the rings, the promises. I only felt alive. I told myself to move, to get up, to pretend nothing happened. But my body refused. I was frozen, not out of fear, but out of longing I had buried for too long. Something about the sound of the rain, the faint smell of his skin, the shared breath in that still moment, it awakened something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. I didn't touch him. He didn't move. But my heart did something I couldn't explain, it leaned closer to danger. I turned slightly, and our eyes met. For a long, dangerous moment, the world outside that kitchen didn't exist. There was only him and me, and the heavy silence between us that felt more real than anything else. Then he stepped back, slowly, carefully, and said, "Good night." I stood there long after he left, my hands still wet, my heart pounding. Because I knew that what I felt for him wasn't just attraction anymore. It was something deeper, something that. It was a Friday night, the kind that feels too long and too quiet. The city outside our apartment buzzed with life, but inside, it was just the two of us again. The weight of everything unsaid had grown unbearable. Every shared glance, every silent meal, every near touch had been building towards something neither of us could stop anymore. I remember lighting a single candle on the table because the power had flickered again, it always did during storms. The soft orange glow made the room feel smaller, more intimate. I could hear the rain against the windows, steady and hypnotic, like a rhythm our hearts were trying to match. He was sitting on the couch, reading something on his phone, pretending to be calm. But I saw it, that tension in his jaw, the way his fingers tightened slightly around the screen. I'd felt it too. The constant war between what we wanted and what we knew was wrong. When our eyes met, it was different this time. No hesitation, no pretending. Just a quiet understanding that we'd run out of excuses. He stood up slowly, walked toward me, and stopped a few feet away. The air between us pulsed, thick with everything we'd been holding back for weeks. My breath caught. I could hear my heart louder than the thunder outside. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His silence asked the question we'd both been avoiding: do we cross this line, or keep pretending it doesn't exist? I should have walked away. I should have said something that reminded both of us who I was, what I had to lose. But I didn't. Because in that moment, the ache of being unseen felt heavier than the guilt of what might come after. He reached for my hand. That was all, just his hand brushing against mine, and yet, it felt like the most dangerous thing I had ever done. Every memory of my marriage, every promise I'd made, flashed through my mind. But none of it could quiet the feeling that rushed through me when he looked at me like I mattered. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. The world outside the window kept moving, cars, rain, thunder, but inside, time froze. I could feel the storm both outside and within me. When I finally stepped back, it wasn't out of strength. It was fear of what I had almost done, and fear that part of me still wished I hadn't stopped. He looked at me, eyes full of apology, and whispered, "We can't." I nodded, even though my heart screamed otherwise. Then I turned away, pretending that the tears running down my face were just from the flickering candlelight. And that's where it began. Not with an action, but with a thought. A thought that whispered, "What if?" That night, boundaries blurred, and though nothing was said aloud, something between us changed forever. The next morning felt different, quieter, heavier, as if the air itself remembered what happened between us. Or maybe it was just me. I stood by the kitchen counter, pretending to scroll through my phone while my mind replayed the night before. Every second of it. The warmth, the stillness, the unspoken electricity that had passed through that small space between us. He walked in, half asleep, hair tousled, wearing that plain white t-shirt that somehow made everything worse. He gave me a soft morning like nothing happened. And maybe nothing had, not in the way people might think. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't the same woman who had fallen asleep next to him. There's a kind of danger in silence, the kind that lingers and hums beneath casual words. When he reached past me to grab a mug, his arm brushed against mine, and the contact was brief but powerful. I caught my breath before he could notice. I tried to laugh, to say something light, but my voice didn't sound like mine. It trembled with something unnamed. That's when I realized the problem wasn't him. It was me. I had let loneliness build a nest inside me, and he had unknowingly stepped right into it. I kept telling myself I could control it, that I was mature enough to draw the line. After all, he was just my flatmate, not my fantasy. But the more I tried to act normal, the more every glance, every sound, every shared laugh started to mean something it shouldn't. That night, when I was in my room trying to read, I heard him laughing softly from the living room. A movie. The same one we had fallen asleep to. My chest tightened. Without thinking, I walked out and stood by the doorframe. He looked up. Smiled. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. I shook my head. I could have turned around, gone back to bed. But instead, I sat down again, the same couch, the same space where everything had begun. This time, we kept a careful distance. But every second felt like a test. He didn't say much, and I think that was what drew me closer. His silence wasn't empty, it was comfortable, understanding, almost protective. It was the kind of quiet that fills the spaces words can't reach. Somewhere between the second and third scene, my head tilted slightly, resting against the couch cushion, close to his shoulder, but not quite there. Close enough that I could feel his presence. And in that small, fragile distance, I found the thing I had been missing for years, the feeling of being noticed, even when I said nothing at all. When the movie ended, he stood and whispered a simple goodnight. I nodded, trying not to let my disappointment show. But as he walked away, his hand brushed mine, a brief, gentle touch that lingered long after he was gone. That night, I lay awake for hours, the sound of rain tapping on the window again, the same rain that had started it all. Only this time, it wasn't confusion I felt. It was fear. Fear of what I was capable of. fear of what I already wanted too much. And somewhere in that darkness, I realized, once you start imagining what could happen, it's only a matter of time before you stop imagining and start doing. After that night, nothing between us felt innocent anymore. We still acted normal, cooked together, laughed, talked about bills, but beneath every exchange, desire pulsed like a heartbeat we both tried to ignore. It wasn't loud, but it was constant. The hardest part wasn't resisting him, it was pretending that I didn't want to. I'd catch myself thinking about how close we had been on the balcony, how his voice had softened when he said my name, how his eyes had searched mine before we both pulled away. I told myself it was just loneliness, that it would fade like all passing temptations. But it didn't fade. It grew. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and hear him moving around the apartment, maybe getting water, maybe pacing like I did when my thoughts became too heavy. Those sounds made me restless. My chest would tighten, and I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, knowing that the only thing separating us were a few steps and a locked door. One evening, after a long day, I came home feeling drained. He was in the kitchen, shirt sleeves rolled up, cooking dinner for both of us. The smell of garlic and butter filled the air, homely, warm, intimate. I leaned against the counter, watching him move. There was something peaceful about the way he focused on small things, chopping, stirring, tasting. He turned to me and smiled. "You look tired," he said softly. I nodded, too tired to speak. But when he placed a hand on my shoulder, everything in me came alive again. It wasn't just a touch, it was an acknowledgement of everything unspoken. We ate quietly that night, barely making eye contact. But every silence carried weight. Every sound, the clink of the fork, the soft hum of music, felt like a conversation we weren't ready to have. After dinner, he reached for the dishes, and I stopped him. "Leave them," I said. "I'll handle it." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. He hesitated, then nodded. But instead of leaving, he lingered, standing right behind me as I ran water over the plates. I could feel his presence, the warmth radiating from him, the quiet breathing, the tension that filled the small kitchen. My hands trembled slightly, though I tried to hide it. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "You don't have to do everything alone, you know." I froze. Because those words weren't just about the dishes, they were about me. My loneliness. My marriage. My need to be seen. I went to bed that night, unable to sleep, replaying every moment, every heartbeat, every almost touch. And deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end of it. It was the quiet beginning of something that neither of us had planned, and something I wasn't sure I wanted to stop. I wish I could say things went back to normal after that night, but they didn't. They couldn't. Something unspoken had begun to live between us, something that breathed in the silence, watched us from across the couch, and followed us through every ordinary moment of the day. I told myself it was harmless. That I was just overthinking. But deep down, I knew the truth, we were already standing too close to the edge. Days turned into weeks, and everything between us started to feel deliberate. The way he'd wait for me to come home before making dinner. The way I'd linger a little longer in the kitchen just to hear his voice. We both knew it wasn't just friendship anymore, but neither of us dared to name it. Because naming it meant admitting what was really happening. One evening, I came home late from work. He was sitting on the balcony, a bottle of wine open, music playing softly from his phone. I hesitated for a second before joining him. The city lights shimmered below, the air cool and quiet. He handed me a glass without a word. Our fingers brushed again. Just that, a brush, but it sent a current through me strong enough to make me forget how to breathe. I took a sip, pretending to look at the sky. Pretending not to feel everything I was feeling. We talked, about random things, about life, about the little dreams we'd put on hold. But somewhere between the laughter and the quiet pauses, our voices softened. His gaze lingered longer than it should have, and I didn't look away this time. That's when it hit me, this wasn't about love. It wasn't even about desire, not entirely. It was about being seen again. About being wanted without having to try. About feeling alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. When he leaned closer to whisper something, I felt my pulse rise. Every instinct screamed that I should move, that I should walk away, but my heart betrayed me. I stayed. Not because I didn't know it was wrong, but because it felt too right in that moment to care. Then, he stopped. He didn't touch me. He didn't cross the line. He just looked at me, really looked, as if waiting for me to make the choice myself. And in that look, there was both temptation and restraint. He respected me enough to let me decide. I broke the silence first. "We shouldn't," I whispered. He nodded, slowly, and yet neither of us moved. The words hung there between us like smoke, visible, heavy, impossible to ignore. I stood up, my legs weak, and walked back inside. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I didn't look back, because I knew that if I did, the line we were pretending didn't exist would disappear completely. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the rain, thinking about every choice that had led me here, to a small apartment, to a stormy night, to a man who wasn't mine but made me feel alive again. And maybe that's why I'm sharing this story anonymously. Because sometimes the deepest confessions aren't about what we did, but about what we almost did. People think infidelity starts with betrayal. But in truth, it begins with a longing to be seen, to be touched by something real. That's where it began for me. He moved out a few weeks later. We never spoke about that night again. But sometimes, when it rains and the lights flicker, I still remember the warmth of that room, the sound of his breathing beside mine, and the line we almost crossed. Not all affairs are physical. Some live forever in the spaces between what was felt and what was forbidden. And that's my truth, the one I'll never say out loud, but will always carry quietly within me. Some stories aren't meant to shock, they're meant to remind us that even the strongest hearts can get lonely. My story isn't about lust or betrayal, it's about how easily connection can blur into temptation when love at home feels distant. Maybe that's why I told it anonymously. Because deep down, we all carry a version of this story, a secret we never acted on, a moment that made us question who we are when no one's watching. If you've ever been in that space between right and wrong, between longing and loyalty, then you know how dangerous silence can be. This story is a fictionalized true confession, shared for mature emotional storytelling and awareness purposes only. It contains no explicit content and is intended to explore themes of love, loneliness, and emotional temptation. Viewer discretion is advised. If this story touched you in any way, please like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more real-life emotional confessions and infidelity stories told from the heart. Broken Heart. Your support keeps this community growing and helps us bring more untold stories to light, stories that remind us that behind every secret, there's a soul still searching for meaning. Don't forget to turn on notifications bell so you never miss another episode of True Infidelity Confessions 2025.